Nigeria achieved independence on the platter of gold. We didn't have to fight for it like they fought in South Africa and Southern Africa, in Algeria, and in so many other countries of the world. The independence came to us on the platter of gold. We didn't know how to make real, serious efforts for the improvement of the nation. And unfortunately, the military came. While the military did some good work, they also did very many bad things. Instead of the military correcting the negative situations they found in 1966, negative situations are developed from 1960. They make things even worse progressively, particularly since after the Governor regime. Up to the time of Governor regime, the military was fairly corrective. But after the Governor regime and after Murtala, things became progressively worse. In fact, instead of the military being seen to be corrective, the military became part of the problem. Gradually, in fact, the principal problem. For instance, take this level of corruption in Nigeria, which is so disabling. Actually, it started in a big way during the military regime, particularly starting from Babangida's regime.
The other day, a friend of mine was stating that he believed that after Murtala's regime, massive corruption crept into our system. And he buttressed his point with one singular statement that there is no regime today since independence that can boast of 3 individuals within that same regime that are as rich as Obasanjo, Yar'Adua, and Danjuma put together.
Yes.
What would you say to this?
No, I think it is true. I don't even think there could be even one person, not even one, was that rich.
Which means basically we must now start to trace massive corruption from the Obasanjo's regime.
No, no, actually from Babangida. When we talk of massive corruption, we are talking about the size of the corruption. And in particular, the indifference of the government to the corruption. It was during Babangida that we really saw massive corruption. Corruption involving billions, of naira, stolen by an individual. During that regime, so many civilians and military men were made fantastically rich through corruption. Not only that, the government itself was identified with corruption. It was very clear that every leader of government was gradually becoming corrupt.
So I recall that during the Shagari regime, there was a BBC interview, documentary, Squandering of the Riches, that also portrayed massive corruption and wastage of resources in Nigeria.
Yes, there was, but definitely on a much lower scale. For instance, up to the time of Buhari, people who were found corrupt were investigated and very often punished. Secondly, the level of corruption was really very small. But now look at it. One person in Nigeria in one day can steal enough to feed 700,000 people for 1 year, and nothing happens to him.
It's a mutation of what started from Babangida's era, sir.
Yes, definitely.
But then, sir, well, you were in government in 1979.
Yes.
And Obasanjo handed over power to a democratically elected government,
yes,
which you participated.
Yes.
And you do know that he retired to a farm which the late president of Tanzania, Julius Nyerere, marveled at,
yes,
at the size and equipment that were at Otta Farm. Can that be justified? Because up to today, Nigerians are not in the picture of how this farm was generated and how it was built by Obasanjo himself.
In fact, I understand from reports that he even owns more property than Otta Farm.
Well, sir, we also obviously we see corruption now as the biggest bane,
yeah,
you know, of Nigerian society. And we will also recall that when Buhari seized power, he had almost everybody arrested, including your honorable self, and had everybody approved. Of the length and breadth of politicians in this country, you were the only person Buhari pronounced to be corrupt-free. And I would like to ask you, sir, what was it like being a governor? What are the temptations? What are the problems facing governors today that they cannot resist corruption? How were you able to face the temptations? Were there really temptations? Are there really temptations in office?
Well, definitely there were temptations. But I have to differentiate between our time and now. During our time, the role of money in politics was very marginal. For example, when I became the governor of Kaduna State, I didn't have a kobo in the bank. In fact, all I had was a 6-year-old Toyota Crown car, which I got when I was a civil servant, this farm, and a few others. And of course, the house you saw today. That was all that I had. And I was still able to win the election as governor of Kaduna State against people who were rich and powerful. Because at that time, politics of principle was the thing of that time. But today, politics has been turned into purely commercial affair. You go into politics to make money, because politics is now the easiest way of making money. It is not going into industry, commerce, or trading. No, go into politics if you want to make big money quickly without efforts. As I told you, a public functionary can steal within one day enough to feed 700,000 people per year.
So how did we get this far, sir?
Well, we got this fast because the people who went into politics in the first place went into politics to steal. And since they went into politics to steal, anybody who supported them so that he too could steal. And therefore, government became a business of stealing. That's all. That's what you can identify government with in Nigeria. And that's why things are so bad. That's why government cannot perform. And if you, a clean person, dare to contest as president, governor, or local government chairman, or any political office, you will end up being a thief also. And if you don't want that, then don't go into these offices. If you go there with your clean mind and then find the rot, get out as quickly as you can. Again, let me sum up everything. Today, nobody can become the president of Nigeria through election without spending a minimum of 30 billion naira for campaign and everything. Now, how can you have a corruption-free country when you cannot be elected into a public office until you can spend this amount of money?
So how were you able to win the election, sir?
No, in our own case, as I said, the situation was not this bad. definitely.
Yeah, but how were you able to win the election?
Well, we mobilized our supporters, and in those days it was a question of the interest of the people. For instance, people said then, we want freedom, we want liberation, not money. But today people say, we want money.
Yeah, but the people realize that there is no way they can be counted based on their ballot votes. And if they cannot make a decision or provide any change through their ballot, they may as well be paid for whatever result the government wishes to declare.
Exactly. This is the position now.
So where are we going? What's going to happen? Are we going to control like this?
No. Look at the level of stealing, which makes it impossible to run government with this kind of stealing. Look at the quarrels within the ruling class, which leads them to killing one another. What more do you need? During the colonial times, 99% or almost so of the senior civil servants were British. Only about 10% or so were Nigerians. I'll give you an example. When I started work in 1953 here in Kaduna, there were not more than 3 or 4 Nigerian senior civil service officers. So it was really a colonial administration, really a British colonial administration in total control. The Nigerians that existed in the civil service were largely clerical officers, taking instruction directly from a European. So the second part of your question is,
well, we cannot do the same amount of job on the level that was done way back to determine the richness of the community, its people, and why we have, in the same way, refused to pay taxes, which ultimately has denied us the right to ask for social services from government.
Well, first of all, you see, British or any colonial administration does not produce capable people. It only produced servants carrying out functions that are limited to the goal of the colonial master. So during colonial times, we were not prepared to serve ourselves. It was after colonial rule that we begin to think for ourselves, plan for ourselves. And we did that on the basis of what had been laid down by the British colonialism. We did that fairly well for 10 years, that is up to 1970. But by 1970, when problems began, a lot of the problems were exposed by the Civil War. We were not prepared for that, because the British did not prepare us for that. And when we attempted, we found ourselves bogged down by a socio-economic system which controlled all development. And that system was capitalism, which is based on individual self-interest, which is therefore not relevant for nation building or even the dignity of the human person. And since that time, we have been managing and destroying our potentiality with this capitalist system as it is now. In Nigeria, they are telling us to withdraw all subsidies, privatize, and have minimal government, thereby producing the leading role of the private sector in economic affairs instead of the leading role of the state in economic affairs to ensure social justice, equality, and progressive development. And that is our problem. We are bogged down with a neo-colonialist, dependent, capitalist system which entrenched private self-interest at the expense of public interest.
I'm sorry to say, but your generation benefited from free education, even from the colonial masters.
Yes.
And today, the leadership, which is still within that bracket, has failed the new generation.
Yes.
We no longer have free education.
Yes. We no longer have public education. Not only free education, we no longer have public education. And even the private education, as costly as it is, it has now started degenerating. And I'm sure in 20 years' time, we will see a lot of scandal resulting from this private education. They have already started issuing false certificates. That's the private schools. They have started issuing false certificates, and there is no way of controlling them. You know, in the United States, during the 50s, 60s, and even in the 70s, there was a lot of this false private institutions. But because there they have a system, they have a standard, nobody could go below. They quickly control the situation, so much that now we know that unlike during the 60s and 70s, you have qualitative education in the United States just as you have in any Western country. During the 50s, 60s, and even early 70s, American education was regarded as inferior to European education. But it is no longer that. In our own case, we don't have any standard.
But we really have standard in anything in our lives, sir.
In Nigeria,
right now,
really we don't have any standard. In fact, the only standard, very few of us have, are two standards. One, believe in God. And you know, you have to go beyond the words to find out whether it is so or not. Secondly, there are individuals in Nigeria that say, even if I cannot do anything about the system, I'll make sure that I remain clean as an individual, whatever the price.
Hello? Okay, well, having said that, I was really going to ask what you think is the most commonest problem today in Nigeria, outside inadequate security.
Actually, the leadership, the political leadership, and the socio-economic system that produced the political leadership. These are the first problems. Because if they can have a relevant socio-economic system which is public-oriented, whose concern primarily is the dignity of the human person, then you will have a leadership, a political leadership which is appropriate to it, and therefore you can have progress in this country. But as long as we continue with this capitalist system and the political leadership it produces, we will always be having problems, backwardness, and eventually anarchy until a revolution sets in. Now, when I talk about revolution, I'm not talking particularly in a class-based revolution. I'm talking of fundamental changes, because even fundamental bourgeois changes are revolutionary. For instance, without any ideological base, you can have a responsible political system in a non-capitalist setting, and that is a good revolutionary basis for starting.
But there appear to be more capitalists in Nigeria today than ideological Nigerians.
Yes, exactly.
But how do you think this group of people will give way for a social change.
And it is very easy because they are morally weak. They are parasitic. They can't endure any hardship. You just slap them and they drop.
But it does appear that everybody has fallen into this arrangement and caught the bug.
Yes, not everybody. In fact, not more than 10% of the people. Only about 10% of the people are now comfortable in Nigeria. Only about 10% can eat 3 square meals a day, can educate their children, can take care of their health. Only 10%. It may even be less than 10%.
But the majority that is outstanding from this 10% don't have a clear definition and no leader to steer them towards this goal.
No, the leadership will not come from them because they have already become irrelevant. Their own concern is self. All the time, they never concern themselves with the public. And therefore, they don't have that security that the public give. For instance, take all this nonsense that is going on. You know, if they were politically relevant, they will make sure that this government that protects their interests so much is secure.
So it doesn't mean that we have no way out, does it?
We have a way out. Change the system.
How do we change the system?
Let us have a non-capitalist system for a start. Let us have a system which has more concern for the welfare of the individual, more concern for the state, which gives us all the protection we need, even at individual level. But at the moment now, they don't concern themselves about the stability of the state. They don't concern themselves about the stability of the political system. They don't concern themselves about the welfare of the individual.
So but why are the Nigerians, ethnic Nigerians, religious Nigerians at each other's neck?
Yes, because they have to do that. They have to do that because they are being manipulated. Look at the rich and powerful Nigerians. They are always manipulating these ethnic differences, these religious differences, these geographical differences, just for their own sake. Take this organized violence based on religion, ethnicity, and so on. Do you think the ordinary person can organize it? It takes millions of naira to organize it. And it is the rich and powerful that organize it, finance the ordinary people to kill themselves. It is some rich and powerful people who finance this for a political purpose. And there are so many of them all over Nigeria. Let me give another historical example. Before the Second Republic, yes, we had religious ethnic crisis, but we used to have them at intervals of even up to 20 years. For about 20 years, there wouldn't be anyone. In fact, the most notorious was the one that happened in Kano. There used to be an interval of 20 years before you have that. But since 1979, Second Republic, we have been having this gradually more often. Until today, we can have it in every part of Nigeria.
But some elements are beginning to fear that because of the insecurity, especially for Southerners in the north and Northerners in the south, Nigeria may not last another 20 years.
No.
What do you think?
Nigeria will probably last forever until there is a new change throughout the world. Do you know why? I will tell you why. Those responsible for organizing these problems are the rich and powerful. They are able to do this because we have the capacity to feed ourselves from agriculture. We have oil. Their money power relies on the fact that we can produce food to feed ourselves and therefore prevent the people from attacking them because of hunger. We also have money from oil to enable us have so many things you can see. The number of cars, the type of houses, the investments, the companies we establish, the foreign economic activities we engage in, and so on. So in other words, these rich and powerful people own the country. They own Nigeria and its people. Now they know that if today Nigeria breaks up, all those Yorubas in the north and in the east will have to go back to their Yoruba land, because we don't have even this minimal tolerable human standard that, for instance, Europe can have. European countries can disintegrate with minimum human losses. But even European countries, you saw what happened in Yugoslavia. So what is going to happen is that the rich and powerful in this Yoruba land, in this Hausa Fulani land, in this Igbo land, in this so-called minority land and so on, the rich and powerful will in the end find that, look, the disintegration of Nigeria will threaten their economic power, will threaten their investment. So what they created, they will stand up and solve it. Let me give you another historical event. After Abure, virtually every section of Nigeria had decided that we couldn't make it. We should go our own ways. But what happened? By that time, we had already started having oil wealth and the benefit of oil. Some of them, the articulate one among them said, look, we can't do it. We can't do it. Nigeria must remain. First, the Midwest under Osadabe said, look, if Nigeria breaks up, we will be the happy hunting ground of the rest of Nigeria, because we have oil, we are a minority. The Yoruba men will fight us, the Igbo men will fight us to get the wealth of our area, and the Hausa man will come and say he is good. And because of his conservative simplicity, we will accept him. In the end, we'll end up being the happy hunting ground of this thing. No, we want one Nigeria. Now, the problem was the North. They came to the North and said to the Northerners, look, if Nigeria breaks up, we will be with you. So when the Igbo and the Yoruba capitalists realized that the northern capitalists will benefit from this, they all agreed that Nigeria must remain. Now, before that, there was also another incident. You see, the Biafrans had liberated the Midwest, you know what they call liberation and so on. Now, because of Ojuku's nationalist ambition, and you know, Igbos were basically nationalistic, he began to attack the West, to take over the West, so that he could have the West and the East under him, and then fight the North, and bring the North not under Biafra, under one Nigeria. They may be called Biafra, but one Nigeria. So while Ojukwu was seen as an Igbo chauvinist, he was really
trying to change the system. Trying to
unify Nigeria under his hegemony. This is simply because of the realities, the economic realities. The Igbos at that time were saying that their land was not big enough to contain them. They have to separate. And they really separated all over the country. And secondly, they are more industrial because they don't have the feudal encumbrances of the Hausa Fulani Muslims and the Yorubas. You know, the Yorubas have this fantastic ideas about themselves and so on, and they have many inhibitions, you know, about what they do. They have gods, all kinds of gods. Some of them are Muslims, some of them are Christians. So they have these inhibitions. The Hausa Fulani Muslims are basically Muslims. They have this, and so on. They have inhibitions. You can say, please don't do this, or so on. Igbos, while they were still Igbos, were still Christians, but they were more Republican than the Yorubas and the Hausa Fulani Muslims. Therefore, they can think straight without inhibition. You know? So, in the Nigeria we have today, we have things that are bound to make us one. But the rich and powerful bourgeoisie, the ruling class, in order to compete between themselves in their fight among themselves, they bring about all these divisions and violence that follow it. But after we have reached some level, they will see the economic sense, the economic necessity of keeping Nigeria one. Now, I know this more than many people because I have since 1978, continuously struggled with other politicians from the whole of Nigeria on the basis of the unity of Nigeria. And we, for instance, right now I'm talking to you, we are very much committed to uniting Nigeria under the CNPP and the NUD.
So where is the relevance of the national conference now?
Well, this is the Sovereign National Conference. Yes. Now, I used to be opposed to the Sovereign National Conference or even the Constitutional Conference until 2003. Before 2003, as a result of the 1999 elections, I felt that even if there was need for Constitutional Conference or National Conference, and I believe there was need for it, this was something that could be handled by the Executive and the National Assembly, because in 1999 we had a tolerably free and fair election, which established the National Assembly and the Executive under Obasanjo. So I opposed it. I said it was not necessary. Any Constitutional Conference or National Conference needed can be organized by the National Assembly. The National Assembly can organize a review of the Constitution or the rewriting even of the Constitution, because there we had legitimate representative of the people. But in 2003, we had a problem. People were not legitimately elected, including the president himself. Some of them are in the National Assembly without contesting any election. Some were there simply because someone paid for them. They were just parasites. Now, how can you empower these people to conduct national affairs at that level? As it is now, we have too many problems. Nothing works in Nigeria. Every aspect of the state of the nation is negative. So therefore, there is need for Constitutional Conference, there is need for National Conference, there is even need for Sovereign National Conference.
So, okay, as former governor, and looking back to your time and where your contemporaries are today, one is surprised that you are not into grabbing contracts and seeking appointments in government offices, boards, running around the corridors of power for cheap patronage. What is responsible for this uniqueness of yours?
Well, first of all, I have to explain that basically I am a public servant. I have never wish to be in business because it is not in accord with moral values. I'm not saying that I have contempt for business, just telling the truth. So I've always wanted to serve the people, to serve the society, to serve the country. Even when I was a child, that has always been my wish. This is how I was trained, and when I began to think for myself, that is the best thing.
But you can serve society by joining the grab team.
No. I will not be serving the society. I will be doing many things inconsistent with my moral values. For instance, I believe religiously also that profit, even if allowed, has to be justified. So there is a level of profit which is un-Islamic, which is beyond which is un-Islamic, against the society, and not even in the interest of the nation. Now it is thinking like this that made me to decide to be a public servant. I went to the civil service when I finished my school, and I continued in the public service up to 1975. But throughout my life in the civil service, I always fought with the system and the operators of the system because of injustice, etc. By 1975, I had grown up. I had become politically more conscious, and I decided instead of from fighting the evil of the system from inside and from outside, I should be involved. So I joined partisan politics in 1978. After I left 1975, after I left the civil service in the same year.